Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Jose here, welcoming you to another episode of Amazing Worlds, where today, yes, I am actually going to be talking about the Smurfs. The Smurfs were the creation of artist and writer Peyo, real name Pierre Culliford, who was also the creator of other comic characters translated into English, like as Benny Breakham and Johann and Peewit. Now, the first appearance of the Smurfs actually happened in the Johann and Peewit story, The Flute with Six Holes, and they appear there as some sort of kind of weird magical creatures thing in 1958, and eventually, due to the popularity, first they were kind of published in short stories, but eventually Peyo wrote their own full volumes, their own stories, and they started being published from 1963. To date, there are 32 stories published about the Smurfs, but only the first 16 were fully written and drawn by Peyo, which is what I would consider canon. So for me, I've got the first few in these fantastic hardback editions in English by Papercats, but for some reason they seem to have stopped doing these anthologies, which are fantastically priced, and they are awesome quality because not only do they include the Smurfs canon stories, but also their appearances in the Johann and Peewit stories. So, and they are lovingly created, these editions. They're great attention to detail, awesome quality, but they don't. I don't know why they've stopped. I've been waiting for years. So I think the last few stories that I've got out of those original 16, I'm just going to buy in Spanish. They're a lot more accessible and complete my collection. Now, everyone knows what the Smurfs are. Basically, they're these tiny creatures, blue. They wear these sort of Phrygian hats, and they all have. They live in a village. They all have distinct personalities, and they are referred to in name by their characteristics. So you have Hefty Smurf, just the strong one. You got Jokey Smurf, who's always playing pranks on other people. Sleepy Smurf, who's always actually sleeping, and you know, I think there's about 100 of them, and they are all guided, ruled. The chief of the tribe is Papa Smurf, who distinguishes himself by dressing in red, as opposed to the white pants and hat. And they seem to be vegetarian because all they eat is sarsaparilla. And most of the stories verge around or move around this evil human wizard Gargamel and his cat Azrael, who, for one of his potions, concoctions thing, he needs a Smurf. So he's always there trying to capture the Smurfs, and they escape him, fight him, whatever. A lot of the other stories take place within the Smurf village and the interactions between the different Smurfs and the tensions between them. And they are great takes on, I'm going to say modern, but 20th century societal pressures and frictions, very intelligently done. So, for instance, in Smurf versus Smurf, there's friction about how they call something, because the Smurf language is a little bit weird. All nouns are replaced by the word Smurf in English. Pitufo in Spanish, and my French, Belgian, this horrendous, the Stromfs were the original name. Anyway, so in the translations, the verbs are the nouns are replaced by this Smurf word, which is a good for everything type thing. And in Smurf versus Smurf, they argue about how something should be named, which is a reflection on the language issues, the tensions in the different languages in Belgium at the time, something similar to what we have in Spain, where different regions of Spain speak a different dialect and it creates conflict. And so all those things, the Smurfs are, for me, they are great. I can't wait for my kids, well, things at a time, but for my kids to grow up and be able to read them, because they're very wholesome comics. They are full of very human values. The moral of the stories is always a positive one. It's a very humane attitude, and great traditional values that everyone should live by. So I really recommend every kid to read the Smurfs. It's just a very nice, feel-good comic, and even as an adult, I've read them time and time again, and I don't feel put off by them, or I don't feel like it's a silly thing like sometimes I felt with Tintin. So there you have it. The popularity of the Smurfs took off way back in the 80s with a TV show that ran from 1981 to 1989, created by Hanna-Barbera. I think I remember watching a little bit, but it wasn't that big into the cartoons. For me, it was more the comics at the time, but the merchandising was all over the place. There was loads and lots of different types of merchandising and so on. And then, obviously, we had the movies that came out back in 2011, 2013, and it was meant to be a trilogy, but the studio decided to reboot the whole franchise in 2017. As a curiosity, as a point of note, the 2011 movie was filmed in a village in Spain on the south coast in Malaga. Like on the coast there, if you go a little bit up north, there's all these hills, and there's all these white, tiny villages there, los pueblos blancos, right? So, in this town of Juzcar, for the movie, the studio came and they painted, every house is white in the village, but they painted it blue for the movie. And when it finished, the local residents took a vote and decided to keep it blue. And apparently it has become a bit of a touristy destination. I don't know. Is this the power of Hollywood? The people being a bit stupid? I don't know. It's a sort of quaint thing. Whatever. Just I don't know. Little anecdote about it. For me, if you were only to pick one or two stories, I would recommend the ones that have stuck with me over the years, since I read them as a kid, and the ones that I go back to as an adult, are the Astro Smurf and the Smurf Olympics. I think the Smurf Olympics is fantastic. Dealing with doping and that kind of thing, but it's done in a super tasteful way, and again the message is super positive there, and it's just a great story. And the Astro Smurf as well, that had the sense of community, and the Smurfs coming together to help one of their own fulfill his dreams. It's a really, really nice, heartwarming story. Now, the beautiful thing about the Smurfs are actually the interpretations about them as an adult. So, one of them I've seen is that the Smurf, they're all male, right? So, some people have put out there the proposition that perhaps the Smurfs are gay. It's a gay community. Now, it's a nice interpretation. I just don't buy it, because in the Smurfette story, Gargamel creates a woman to breed dissension in the village. I mean, that's a whole other interpretation, right? How a female causes tension between all the males, but anyway, so they're not gay because they're all attracted to a Smurfette. Although again, the original Smurfette is presented as she's not that attractive, and she feels bad about herself. She's got image issues, and then Papa Smurf gives her a makeover, read into all of that what you want, and she becomes the blonde Smurfette that we all know. And then they all fall head over heels to try. They're all in love with Smurfette. So again, vanity, look of a person. There's a lot of interpretations that you could take it there. My favorite interpretation of the Smurfs is that they are a communist society ruled by a ruthless leader, and I buy that one. You see, the Smurfs, they all have their assigned roles in society. Jockey Smurf does his thing, the Inventor Smurf does his thing, Hefty Smurf, Sporty Smurf, they all do their thing, and Papa Smurf, which got this sort of, you know, Old Testament style beard, dresses in red, you know, and he tells them all what to do and runs shop and stuff like that. So, yeah, some sort of totalitarian racist utopia there, because, you know, they don't allow anyone from outside. The whole racist thing, actually, completely went over my head as a kid. You know, one of the stories, I think it was the first story. Originally, it was the Smurfs and the Black Smurf, where this kind of weird, evil Black Smurf comes into the village, and when he bites others in the little tail, they all turn black and become evil. Now, over the years, that story got reissued, and the Black Smurf is not black anymore, it's purple, and now it's called the Smurfs and the Purple Smurf. You see, generally, I'm not a fan of remakes. I'm not a fan of reinterpretation of any kind of art. You know, I don't see the need to remake Hollywood movies. I don't see the need to remake the Mona Lisa. I don't see the need to remake War and Peace. I don't see the need to remake the Smurfs. However, being the father of two mixed-race boys and being married to a black woman, I am not unaware that there are a lot of turns of phrase in both in Spanish and in the English language, and there's a lot of societal and cultural references to darkness or blackness as being evil that are wholly ingrained in the way we think, which there's a whole other conversation. But in this particular case, as I said, I think as a kid, if I gave them to read to my, whenever he becomes 8-year-old son, he's not, if I gave him the original one, I don't think he will feel bad or feel, you know, that he identifies with the evil Black Smurf or anything like that. But in this case, I think it's a fairly harmless changing, or little change to the story, that maintains the original intention and meaning, and I don't think there is anything to argue against. I don't see it as overly controversial, and I don't really, more than seeing not seeing a problem with it, I actually think it is a positive change. So I think in this particular case, kind of going very much against my normal leaning and the way I see things, I think it's a good change. So yeah, I'm gonna wait for my next paycheck, get my next compendium volume, complete the 16 stories here in these 5 volumes that I've got. I think it goes up to story number 12, so there's another 4 to go. So I'll be completing them anytime soon. But yeah, strongly recommend the Smurfs, even as an adult. But if you got kids, you know, certainly. The great stories, great moral values, great learning to be taken there. Entertaining, good fun. What is not to like? Anyway, this is all I have for today. Thank you, as usual, ever so much for watching, liking, subscribing. Even if you disagree with me, please comment. Let me know what you think. Take loads and loads of care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.